As soon as I learned to type Amazon.com, I could get my way to about 2,500,000 books. That was remarkably easy.
I can look up such as Mediterranean cooking.
Nice of you to join us.
I think I'll go out for a magazine.
You're gonna go out for that? Cosmo.com has magazines.
Everything they do is geared towards getting you certified. Their training is fast, it's flexible, and it assures your success.
The internet.
Internet.
The internet.
Internet.
The internet.
No, sir, things aren't what they used to be. Flip phones, manual watches, taxis, phone booths, pagers, Blackberries, CD burners, iPods, and well, you get the gist. When the world still relied on the old ways of doing things, the new methods were still seen as unnecessary and a tad bit flashy. Truth be told, some of you watching this might not have been around during this time, or perhaps if you were too young. Regardless, this era could be defined as the awkward phase of technological advancements. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but some pretty funky interpretations were made regarding the future of technological advancements. I mean, just look at this. And this didn't just affect the physical world, but the digital one as well. You see, the internet has been around since the 80s. Only recently has the World Wide Web been a thing. 1993 to be exact. People often confuse the two. All of the web is the internet, but not all the internet is the web, is the simplest way of putting it. It was only in the 2000s that things got crazy. Easier access meant more people were actually able to access it. Streamlined method of use meant no longer having to be technologically in-depth to be able to use it properly. Faster internet speed meant sharing stuff much quicker, and etc. However, since things were progressing faster than the most regulations and guidelines could keep up, that meant that the web was truly more unbound. The digital Wild West, if you would. And since there were more children on the internet than ever before, that only added to the unpredictable nature of the web. There were no algorithms, there were no fact-checking, and there was little to no protective filters. This has resulted in some truly disturbing content to arise. Content that spread to all over the internet. Content that baffles even the most sane of minds. Some of which can still be felt to our present day. Like a childhood nightmare that lingers within the back of your mind. Be warned, some of these might disturb you.
On January 4th, 2012, this post appeared on 4chan, one that will forever remind us just how deep the internet goes, one that will forever haunt those who were unable to solve it, one that still remains unsolved to this day. Within minutes of the post, a person discovered that once you opened a file associated with the post using a text editor, an appended string of readable text was available. The string had a decipherable code that formed a link. This link led to this image. Now at first glance, this image reversed to a dead end. However, if a person was able to use an application called Outguess, individuals would be able to extract information embedded within the first picture. This info led to a subreddit, which led to this book. Within this book, there was a code used to uncover a phone number that left this pre-recorded message.
Very good. You have done well. There are 3 prime numbers associated with the original final .jpg image. 3301 is one of them. You will have to find the other 2. Multiply all 3 of these numbers together and add a .com on the end to find the next step. Good luck. Goodbye.
Now, it was at this point that people started to realize that this was no ordinary hunt. No, this was different, unlike anything anyone had seen on the internet before. They had no idea how right they were. It started to gain traction all over, and the race was on to uncover the mystery. Now, just like with anything that grows to such large amounts of popularity within a short amount of time, people started to question the nature and true intent behind it. More and more work was being put into discovering what exactly this post meant. Some people speculated that this was just a work of control. After all, why would he waste such large amounts of energy on an elaborate ruse? Others believed that it was a treasure hunt of sorts, that there was some sort of reward at the end. Others believed that this was an elaborate marketing campaign. This was very common during the 2000s. And then others believed that this was something bitter, the work of a recruiting tactic of an intelligent agency. Regardless, one thing was made clear as day. These individuals responsible for this were extremely intelligent. Now, returning back to the call, the two missing numbers mentioned in the recording turn out to be the exact dimensions of the first image. After multiplying the width and height with 33 at 1, you got 845.145.127. You use this as a web address, which would take you to a website with a cicada and a countdown. Once the countdown reached 0, the website uploaded a list of coordinate numbers that pointed all over the world, 14 locations and 5 countries to be exact. It was at this point people were able to rule out of this being the work of just a troll. Only a work of a collective would be able to possess such resources capable of owing something like this off. This was now starting to bleed into the real world. The number of potential completionists was starting to be filtered out. No longer were you in the comfort of your own home. Haven't you looked up information from a computer? Now you actually have to venture out into the real world in places that you might never actually have gone or would ever go outside of this. Once these dedicated individuals reached their location, they were greeted with a poster with a cicada symbol and a QR code. Once the code was scanned, this led to an image, which led to a riddle, which led to a book, which leads to a website. Now it was at this point that things took a turn. Only the initial individuals who made it to the website were allowed in. They wanted the best and not the rest. These talented individuals who worked tirelessly made sure to document their progress to their growing fan base. But once they reached this point, they fell silent. The final contestants were given a warning not to work with others or give out info to anyone. Obviously, since we know this, someone did not heed this warning. That's as much as we know for certain. But it wasn't over, not by a long shot. No, 2 more challenges preceding this one followed a few years later. To keep things simple, the second challenge followed the same formula towards the beginning. Images, hidden codes within books, and length. In the end, they started to depart with new mixed-in elements. In the second challenge, unlike the first one, the cicada never officially mentioned that the challenge was completed, so it made it difficult to know whether or not people were able to solve it. However, people were able to deduce that some individuals did indeed complete the challenges, just like in the first one. Those who will document their progress went silent once they reached a certain checkpoint. Now the last one, again, followed this same formula. However, this time around, no individual was actually able to solve it. You see, this third challenge towards the end led to a book called Liber Primus, meaning the first book in Latin. All evidence points to the book being read by Cicada themselves. It seems to be a manifesto of sort. It gives up a lot of cryptid messages, mostly advocating for the rights of personal freedom and to break away from the illusion of control over this world. One translated quote states, "This is nothing to be read about. To belong is death." In this book, an individual is supposed to get something out of it, right? But what? In some of these pages, certain text has layers of encrypted code. Nobody has yet to crack it. Cicada even went as far as asking individuals to re-examine the book again. There's something in it that they're missing. Even with the passage of time, nobody knows what this was all about. And that in and of itself is terrifying. What exactly was this all leading to? What happened to the contenders who actually finished their task? Was there some sort of work of an intelligent entity? Who knows? As you look down the rabbit hole, even the more outlandish explanations seem to be a possibility. The mystery remains unsolved.
As I was walking home one night, I saw a stranger by a light. His arms were long, his head was small. I've never seen a man so tall. His arm reached out to grab me tight. I went along without a fight. I looked and saw he had no face. And then my heart began to race. He spoke to me without a sound and began to pick me right off the ground. The Slender Man took me away to never see new light of day. a tall, faceless pale entity dressed in black. Described as having long limbs and sometimes tentacles protruding from behind him. This supernatural entity has existed for a long time. Records of encounters with him go back as far as the Egyptian times, maybe even earlier. One would be foolish enough to think that this was just some simple monster. Although he does leave a rather gruesome aftermath with his victims, he's not limited to beastly attacks. He is quite capable of extreme acts of cruelty. He sometimes just leaves his victims to be inflicted upon madness upon seeing him. Sometimes he possesses others to do unspeakable acts on their loved ones. Sometimes abducting a close loved one and leaving their victims unharmed in order to emotionally damage them, or even just stalking an individual for years to make their life as miserable as possible. However, there's more to him than just that. The majority of encounters with him have been seen from just a distance, usually only seen in desolate areas. Forests, abandoned buildings, suburban streets, and clearings are prime locations. Just watching and not interfering. Some theorize that he's merely an entity that likes to be alone and watches, only occasionally indulging in the more violent, malevolent acts, like a person who does a bad deed, then just goes on about their day as if nothing happened. That in and of itself is terrifying. To switch on a dime and be able to do such horrible things, just because you could. However, there are rare instances of him appearing in large gatherings, in the background of course, sometimes even purposely exposing himself enough to be photographed. It's not known why he does this, but it's usually believed to be a bad omen, sort of a warning of impending doom. Oddly enough, it's never a direct result of him. It could be a wildfire that wipes out many, or a bridge collapsing, etc. Nevertheless, still extremely dangerous regardless of its common tendencies. A perplexing entity indeed. Even though this is indeed fictional, sometimes fiction can bleed over into reality. On May 31st, 2014, in Wisconsin, United States, two 12-year-old girls lured their friend into the woods at a local park and stabbed her 19 times to appease the character known as Slender. The victim did indeed survive, and the attackers were caught. They were both found guilty by mental illness, and one of the attackers got 25 to life, while the other got 40 to life. The victim will forever be scarred. Life can sometimes be more scary than fiction.
There is a file circulating throughout the internet, one that isn't supposed to exist. A cancerous tumor that will spread until everything is dead. If rumors are to be believed, a lot of suicides have happened during the emergence of this file. It might be more than just a coincidence, completely running rampant throughout the internet, spreading like a disease, until one day it just up and vanished. You hear the whispers of others when you dare to bring up the topic, trying to convince you that your efforts are pointless. Some block your path, forbidding you from proceeding any further lest you go over the deep end. Others trying to trick you and deceive you with falsities to end your foolish endeavor before it's too late. Almost as if the entire internet has banded together to prevent you from leaking an image said to contain evil. There used to be a group that were towards the opposite of this endeavor, believing no information should be barred off. Everyone should be free to search it up at their own risk, but one by one left this mortal coil. The last thing the last member wrote was smiles through email. There's the tale of a teen who tried to create a physical copy of the photo in order to prank his school. A little Halloween scare of sorts. His house burned down later that night. No survivors. It's not known where or how this photo originated. Perhaps a person messing with something they had very little understanding of. Perhaps a disturbed artist who was able to capture the essence of evil, too much for us to comprehend. Or maybe created by Satan himself. Whatever it may be, if you gazed upon it, you would be filled with night terrors of a demonic entity stalking you, whispering to your ear to spread the image far and wide, telling you it will spare you if you just do what it wants. It wants to be seen. The more it spreads, the stronger it gets. Eventually, you will break. The only escape is death. Do not let your curiosity get the better of you. So whatever you do, don't look at it.
Does anyone remember this kid show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found a reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station it was, but I do remember it was on a weird time, like 4 p.m.
It seems really familiar to me. I mean, I grew up outside Ashland and was like 9 at 72. Still, you know, the mind doesn't work all that well over all these years. Candle Cove. Was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl.
Yes, okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from other parts of dolls, really low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll that looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember the station it was. I don't think it was WTSF though.
Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what you mean, Sky's Hell. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple of months, in 71, not 72. I was 12 and I watched it a few times with my brother. It was Channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagines herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughingstock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got too scared too easily. There was a calliope music constantly playing. I don't remember the girl's name. Janice or Jade or something. I think it was Janice.
Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughingstock and Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face with the lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea and had an awful Ed Wynn voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden plastic model to the foamy puppet version one that talked.
Oh, now I remember. God, such a trip. I remember everything being so lifelike as if it was real. Do you remember the part, Sky's Hell? You have to go inside.
Ugh, Mike, I gotta chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would push in into the Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside. With his 2 eyes askew and the flopping foam jaw and the fishing line that opened and closed it. It looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that just had a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth.
Honestly, I thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on. Nightmare fuel.
That wasn't the villain. The puppet with the mustache? That was the villain's sidekick. Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that only meant he had one eye. But yeah, the villain was the other marionette, the Skin Taker. I can't believe what they let us watch back then.
Jesus H. Christ, the Skin Taker. What kind of kid show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings, just a dirty skeleton wearing the brown top hat and cape, and his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Christ almighty.
Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Was that supposed to be a children's skin?
Huh. Yeah, I think so. I remember his mouth didn't open and close. His jaw just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" In the Skin Taker, they didn't look at the girl, but at the camera and said, "To grind your skin."
I'm so relieved that other people remembered this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had where the opening jingle ended. The show faded to black and all the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing around spastically and just screaming, all screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it.
I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode.
No, not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place, crying and screaming for the whole show.
Maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because he said that, but I swear to God I remember seeing what you described. Just screaming. This is the intro that played at the beginning of most episodes.
Oh God, yes, the little girl Janice. I remember seeing her shake and the skin taker screaming through his gashing teeth, his jaws careening so widely I thought it would just come off its hinges. I turned it off and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on.
So, I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9, and if she remembered a kid's show, Candle Cove. She looked at me. She was surprised and asked how I could remember that. And I asked, why? And she said, because I used to think it was so strange that you would say, I'm going to watch Candle Cove now, Mom. And then you would tune into the TV to static and just look at dead air for 30 minutes. You had such a big imagination with your little pirate show.